The Don Peters Fitness Center at the corner of Reseda Boulevard and Sherman Way is perhaps not the most widely publicized gym in Los Angeles, but the proprietors aren't complaining. They say publicity bears the faces of Janus. If it kept the cash register tickling, it also attracted such parasitic weeds as were incapable of existing outside the glare of the spotlight, and so lived only to crowd less predaceous plants out of the garden. Don and his attractive wife Dee have always depended on their clientele to tell a friend about their gym, with remarkable results. After just 3 years, the Don Peters Fitness Center is close to becoming a religion, with participants sharing more than an epidermal interest in physique development. Don's clients are friends on and off the gym floor, a rare situation these days. There is hardly a moment of the day when the place isn't abuzz with muscle-building activity. Certainly the exclusive and varied equipment, all of it specially designed by Don, a physique star in his own right, must be considered a prime factor in the gym's success. The well-manicured environment, silent air conditioning, shampooed carpets, polished wall mirrors, agreeably scented bathrooms, and soothing music can't be overlooked. Nor can the contributions of managers Bob and Ray. However, there is absolutely no doubt that what makes the Don Peters Fitness Center so attractive to the best element in our sport is precisely that which is lacking at too many gyms nowadays: bodybuilding bonhomie. Here's star member Bertil Fox. The gyms of California are the best in the world, both in terms of floor space and diversity of equipment. Pity that some bodybuilders are such grumps they cast dark clouds over what might otherwise have been a year-long summery environment. Of all the gyms I've trained at, the atmosphere at Peters is the friendliest. Bertil was hardly contributing to that vaunted affability the other morning. However, normally he bounces into the gym around 7:45, his sunny smile reflecting his Caribbean roots. After exchanging pleasantries with early morning patrons, he sits alone for a few minutes in a quiet corner, awaiting his partner's arrival, preparing himself mentally for the horrors ahead. Last Tuesday morning, however, something was clearly amiss. Lurching like a zombie into the gym, he headed straight for the squat rack. The rest of the herd knew better than to bother him when Bertil was in the mood. Wordlessly, he started packing the largest plates on the bar. 2, 4, 6 plates, each weighing 45 pounds, including the bar. The weight totaled 315 pounds. A hell of a warm-up poundage, even when your name is Bertil Fox. In less than 15 minutes, he'd done 4 sets of squats. By the time his partner arrived, the weight on the bar was close to 450 pounds. Tutored in the ways of Fox, his partner joined in without a word, starting with a respectable 225 pounds. The two men did 6 sets together, making 10 for the Fox. Bertil ending with just under 600 pounds and his partner 380. With barely 2 minutes rest between exercises, they went on to do hacks, leg presses, and leg extensions with poundages the world is not yet ready for. And then it was on to the calf work, with more weight than Don Peters' machines were designed to carry. An hour went by. Bertil didn't say more than 3 words to his partner. Indeed, what issued from his mouth sounded more like grunts of a hungry bear. As he made his way out of the gym, I considered asking him what was on his mind, but thought better of it. Catch him later. His home in the Woodland Hills is but a scream away from mine. Promptly at 6 that evening, Bertil returned to the gym, mood unchanged. This time 2 partners awaited. He nodded in their general direction, as if to say, let's go on with it. Like programmed automatrons, they joined him at the dumbbell rack, the heavy end. Here, he made some emphatic remark about the weather, lowered himself onto an adjustable bench that had been preset at 90 degrees, and growled fox talk. His helpers, who knew the lingo, fitted a pair of ominous 100-pound dumbbells in his hands at shoulder level and stepped back. With a great sucking sound that must have originated deep in his entrails, Bertil rammed the weight skyward. He held the position just long enough to satisfactorily anchor himself. Then he was off again. He brought the dumbbells down slowly to within a quarter of an inch of his spiral deltoids, groaned, then shot them back up to arm's length. Here he held the position for a count of 2 before continuing down, groan, up, pause 1, 2, down, groan, up, pause, till he completed 10 reps, whereupon his backup team rushed in to relieve him. For his second set, Bertil was served 220-pound dumbbells. Once more, and in the described fashion, he pressed the wicked iron for 8 reps. Then he was lowering the dumbbells to begin his 9th repetition. His helper stepped in on either side, each with a hand under Fox's elbow. Understand that the aid they volunteered was barely discernible. For all the onlookers could tell, it might well have been only psychological assistance that gave Bertil as he groaned against his recalcitrant pressures of his last 2 reps. All told, Bertil did 6 sets of seated dumbbell presses, the last 2 with 150 pounds in each hand. Without any signals the onlookers could spot, Bertil's helper stepped in to give a hand in the completion of each set, usually during the last 2 or 3 reps. Considering the poundages Bertil handled, his workout tempo was astounding. Where other champions might have taken their turn only after both parties had completed a set of presses, Bertil immediately jumped in after each to do a set of his own. In other words, he did 2 sets to every one of his henchmen. He followed up the initial assault with standing lateral raises, with weights ranging from 50 to 85 pounds in each hand, and upright rows with what a lot of people would consider respectable deadlift poundages, and presses behind the neck that began with 200 pounds and ended with 305 pounds. All the time it was go, 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 with Bertil changing from mountain man to beast before the startled eyes of the people around. Oh yes, he sweated a lot and seemed to grow larger by the minute, but he never once appeared in need of a rest. It was as if he was powered by some inexhaustible dynamo, hard by his duodenum. His partners gave up at the end of his shoulder workout. The man was through, but the beast still had 30 minutes to kill. He blasted off with preacher bench curls, sometimes with an overloaded cable bar, sometimes with a pair of 80-pound dumbbells, each beginning with a grisly grunt and ending with a scream of an eagle. His tricep pushdowns rattled the lat machine to its foundations, and when he got into the chest tricep stretches with 100-pound dumbbells, well, even the most blasé of Peter's patrons abandoned their own efforts to stare open-mouthed. Grunt, grunt, shriek, groan. So it went until Bertil decided it was time to call it a day, and without a word stormed off into the night. Long after his departure, however, the between-sets talk at the gym concerned the animalistic things Bertil would do in the competition come to the Olympia in London. If Bertil's training attitude left no room for lollygagging, it certainly left behind an interesting mix of awe and envy. I bumped into the beast 3 hours later. Lately, he'd taken to relaxing at the edge of our community pool after his evening workouts. The conditioned atmosphere of his apartment was something he thought he'd never get used to, even though it made the heat of the summer nights a little less murderous. Although he had been born in the 85-degree climate of the Caribbean, his system had long lost its zest for hot weather, which was why whenever he thought about home, what came to mind wasn't sunshine in St. Kitts, but foggy London and snow. Pity he had not yet learned to swim, and thus lost out on the arcane joys of late-night California dreaming in chlorine. "That was some workout you took this evening," I said, stretching out on the Shea lounge beside him. Yeah. Whatever had occupied his thoughts for 2 workouts was still ensconced. Believe it, the guys at the gym talked of nothing else after you left. So what you think of that Albert Beckles, eh? I can't figure him out. I've tried. Huh? I was certain the fault was mine, that somehow I'd missed an essential part of the dialogue. What was that about Albert? And that was how I discovered that the previous afternoon Bertil had received word from a friend in London. This party had apparently been talking to Beckles, who had reportedly promised to do such things to Fox as would break his mama's heart. Worse, Beckles was supposed to have said that desperation had driven Bertil to the brink of insanity, to the point where he was regularly injecting foreign substances into his neck for muscular development, something like that. "I can't believe he'd say that about me," said Bertil, rising from the cold concrete, and doubtless still smarting from the after effects of the 1982 Night of Champions. So that was it. That was why he'd seemed in a mood for murder at the gym. All the grunting and groaning had been directed at his long-distance detractor. I suggested it might be better for all concerned and for his own career if Bertil avoided such correspondence and was likely to drop him in a blue funk exactly when he needed to be in blue heaven. "I guess you were taken out on the weights, huh?" The smile on my face did nothing to conceal my sarcasm. A number of locker room analysts had decreed that negative energy can be translated into positive action in the gym, meaning that if the balance of your mind was disturbed, you should profit from the opportunity to take the toughest workout of your life. Of course, in the past, both Bertil and I had disagreed with the notion, predicting that it would cause a hernia epidemic, so straight away the kid knew where I was coming from. "No," he said, "I wasn't really angry at the gym. I was just pissed off." Mount Fox erupted, chest and shoulders heaving with belly laughter. When he was dormant again, I asked Bertil why he continued to train with such poundages as would cripple most bodybuilders, when it was obvious to anyone with eyes that he needed at least was more mass. A serious mane settled on him. "I've been working out for nearly 13 years, he said, and I've only quite recently realized that in practice, some of the soundest theories amount to zero. Training with heavy weights had transformed him, given him a physique worthy of world acclaim. He had faced down some of the most revered and feared names in bodybuilding, men like Serge Nubret and Sergio Oliva. Once he competed in the Mr. World contest in America and taken nearly every available trophy back to Britain. His development had attracted Joe Weider, famous for knowing a good thing when he saw it. Yet Bertil had never developed the confidence in his own methods that their success clearly warranted. He came to America in 1981, determined to conquer bodybuilding's final frontier. He thought he knew his body well enough not to be in need of unfounded advice, but he had succumbed. He'd allowed himself to be taken in by the locker room scientist. He'd fallen victim to their baseless notions. For the first time in his life, he had taken the one diuretic a day for 3-day route to definition, and it had been a road to perdition. The night of the champions ended without a glimpse of the famous Fox. His place on the stage of the Beacon Theater had been taken by the dehydrated worm. Muscle cramps played havoc with his sanity. He couldn't hit the simplest pose without excruciating pain. Hell was in his pecs, his abdominals, and in his thighs. Oh yes, he learned the hard way that a little knowledge can indeed be a dangerous thing. So he'd returned to his old ways. Never mind all the talk about champions who cut their training poundages by 15% in the last few weeks before a contest. Never mind all the talk about the ultra-strict form that was the only sure way to peaks and cuts and valleys. Bertil had found heavy weights to be his key to bodybuilding heaven. Definition was the result of marrying high-intensity training with careful dieting. When training for a contest, he says, I now work by the clock. If earlier a particular session took an hour, now I try to do it in 50 minutes or less. I strive to handle the heaviest weights in all exercises, and I try like hell to cut down on the swing in such movements as curls and laterals. I also place much faith in my partners. There's nothing in the book to beat correct use of forced reps principle. Where other bodybuilders deliberately reduce their training poundages in order to employ a stricter workout style, Bertil sticks with his usual weights. It's the only way to keep his self-confidence at peak levels, he says. The minute I start training lighter than usual, something in my head starts to mock me. I end up believing I'm getting weaker, and from there, it's the pits for me. His formula for mass and cuts: use as much weight as possible in all exercises. Instead of doing, say, 10 cheat curls, do 5 in a more rigid style. Now put the weight down, count to 6, pick it up again and go for another 5 reps. Put the bar down again, count to 4, Pick it back up and do another 3 fairly strict reps, and consider the whole thing as one set. Bertil is now convinced that muscular definition has nothing whatsoever to do with workout style. It's mainly wrapped up in what you put down your throat, he says. And even here, you have to be careful not to follow just anybody's dietary plan. For what's good for Zane might be his abdominal pain to someone else. The way Bertil puts it, what does it profit a man if he gains a bunch of veins and paper-thin skin and suffers the loss of his muscular mass? He's been there, he says, and it's not a very nice place. I first took up bodybuilding because I want to be strong, Bertil says. I want to be a tower of power. Then I decided I wanted to look like Scott and Arnold and Franco, who were all powerful men, particularly Franco. I also admired Sergio Oliva, whose roots are in weightlifting. Well, I didn't want to be a power lifter or an Olympic lifter, but I saw no reason why a man couldn't develop a contest-winning body that was strong enough to set records. What about the concept of peak contraction? Don't misunderstand me, Bertil said. The Weider principles all have their places. They've been tested over the years by all types, and they've proved near miraculous. However, my favorite is the overload technique, which when incorporated with the Weider principles of forced reps and reverse gravity is unbeatable as a catalyst to muscle gains and power. He took another longing look at the pool. Of course, Weider's instinctive training principle is the key to bodybuilding success, no matter how you cut it. And I strongly recommend bodybuilding the Weider approach and the best of Joe Weider's muscle and fitness to all who inspire after bodybuilding honors. The 2 books contain lengthy discussions on the Weider principles as used by the various IFBB champions. Now about that Beckles. It was time to say goodnight. Kim Fox had chosen the right moment to come looking for her husband, and considering his frame of mind earlier, who could blame her?